Good morning, David.
Good morning. How are you today?
Very good, very good. Sunshine. It's not raining. Lovely weather. Yeah.
Yes, it's sunshine here too. I'm in Prescott, Arizona, so it's usually sunshine here.
And warm and nice.
Yes. Fortunately, Prescott's about 10 degrees cooler than Tucson, where I live, so we're beating the heat. That's what we call it here in Arizona. We're heading up to the mountains to beat the heat.
Yeah, yeah. I still can get over the fact that at 21 years old, you were responsible for a nuclear reactor on a submarine. I barely trusted myself to cook breakfast at that age.
Yes, absolutely. It That's one thing about the military. I'm not sure about other militaries, but at least the U.S. military, they entrust and enable people at a young age to take responsibility, and it can be a blessing, it can be a curse. It all depends on how you respond to that. But usually, when people get out of the military, if they've only been in for maybe 4 years or whatever, and they step back out into the secular world, it's kind of a shock because they're like, hey, I was just in charge of a multi-billion-dollar reactor. What do you mean you want me to sweep the floor?
Wow. Wow. You know what really stayed with me, David, from our first conversation during the intro chat? It's this idea that leadership is not about control. It's about the ripple you leave in others people's life. And I think that's something a lot of people need to hear right now.
I agree with you 100%. It's something which I've really learned throughout my life. And so finally here at as I'm getting ready to actually retire, putting stuff together to maybe pass on and help others to be able to learn and glean from what I've been able to learn. And especially in today's culture, I'm just so disheartened by everywhere you turn, everybody, it's got to be this way. And if you don't do it that way, then I just disengage from you. I don't know how many people I know that, my age, so they got grandkids, but their kids will refuse to let them see their grandkids because they believe differently about something than they do. And just how damaging that is. It's that whole inward focus which limits everything. And people strive to get to a place where they feel like they have some control and some authority, so they call it leadership. But when they get to that position, they're not true leaders. They're just authoritarians saying, no, this is the way I want it done, so you have to do it that way. And it just creates such a damaging wake. I like to tell people that water can bring life wherever it goes, or it can bring damage wherever it goes. And the same with leadership. You can either leave a life-giving ripple and spread it with the way you lead people, or you can leave a damaging wake which just crushes people and makes them not want to produce or perform. And I think you see that throughout many cultures and many societies today, where people are just shutting down because they don't feel empowered to be who they are.
All right. Yeah. I've been looking, David, for this conversation for almost a week. So let's get into it.
Let's do it.
The following is a conversation with David Petrash, a U.S. Navy veteran, leadership speaker, entrepreneur, pastor, and founder of Ripple of Faith Leadership. This is PreZero Sports Talk podcast, and I'm your host, Sid Bensalah. Today, we delve into leadership under pressure, faith, purpose, family, service, and the ripple effect our lives leave behind to uncover genuine stories and insights that truly matter. Thank you so much for tuning in, subscribing, and supporting the show. Your support and financial contributions help us bring authentic voices, real stories, and conversations that go beyond the game. If you would like to support the show, please check the episode description for more. David, welcome to the show. It's great to have you here.
Thank you. It's great to be here, and I love that voice that you have right there. It's that pet, that was an announcer's voice. That's so good. I like that.
Thank you. I will inform my wife, so I will let her know. So, David, you've lived through some fascinating worlds: military, ministry, business, leadership, entrepreneurship, and somehow all of them seem connected through this deeper idea of service and impact. But I want to start from the beginning because I think people often see the outcome without understanding the road behind it. When you look back, David, at your younger self, before the military, before leadership, before all of this, what kind of kid was David Petrash?
Probably if you asked my mom, she said my name was Damn It David because I got in trouble all the time.
Naughty David.
Yes. So I think growing up, I was somebody that had natural talent and ability. My coach, I played football, quarterback in high school, and my coach said, David, you're a darn good mediocre, and you're always going to be a darn good mediocre because you rely on your natural ability and you don't put in the extra effort. And that was really the case. Growing up, I had natural ability. I didn't have to study. I would just take the test in school, and I was good enough to, pass. And the same with playing sports. I could rely on my natural ability. And it wasn't until I got to college level where the skill set was better than my natural ability, where I had to assess and say, okay, do I put in the extra effort and time, or do I say, okay, I'm going to sit on the couch and eat popcorn? And so that was a changing point for me. And I wound up going to New Mexico Military Institute. I had tried to get to the academy, the Naval Academy. And again, I made it all the way to the end. So you have 400 people who are going to get selected. And so you're down to the bottom 800. And it's like, okay, this person has 4 cavities. This person has 2 cavities. We're going to take the person with 2 cavities. So I made it to that level, but I didn't make it to the final selection. And so that was really the first major, I guess, wow, I didn't accomplish it. And so they did offer me to go to a junior academy, which was New Mexico Military Institute in Roswell, New Mexico. And so I went there, and that's where the military career started, and that's where the leadership training actually started. And I had, he was an old Army drill sergeant that was one of the people at the school. He was one of the instructors. And he said something to me which resonated with me still to this day. He said, David, when you graduate and you get your officership in the military, go play golf. And I was like, what? He was like, you've got a team of people that you need to empower and let them do their job. He said, too many people come out of the academies thinking they know what to do and try to tell, 10, 15-year enlisted people how to do their job. And all it does is frustrate them. He says, empower them, serve them, give them the tools to do their job, and go play golf. I was like, wow, okay, that makes sense. And you really did see that in the military. You had officers who thought they knew more than the enlisted people who were doing it for years and years. And the true officer who got the most out of his people was somebody who empowered them, equipped them, said, what do you need to be successful? What's holding you back from being successful? Let me take away those roadblocks. Let me ensure the resources are there. And then I'll filter everything from top down and also bottom up, so you're able to do your job. And that's really what the role of leadership is to set up an environment for people to be successful.
Now, when you applied to the Naval Academy but didn't get in, was it some kind of setback? Or put it this way, how hard was that moment for you at that time?
It was a setback, and here's the dichotomy. So I was short in high school, so I played quarterback my freshman year at 4'11". So my coach got me into doing ballet, so I could jump to throw the football. So I did ballet all through high school. And come my senior year, I had 2 routes I could go. I had a scholarship to go to school on a ballet scholarship through the Mesa Academy of Arts. And I could have done that. I actually traveled with a ballet company for a short time performing. I was Franz in Coppelia, and I was the Prince in the Nutcracker. Or I could go the military route. And I was raised a military kid. My dad was in the Air Force for 20 years. And so even though my dad supported everything I did in ballet and he came to all my performances, he used to also give me a hard time, like putting little bows on my pillows and stuff like that, you know. But so it was a subliminal message that, yeah, you don't really want to do ballet permanently, so let's go the military route. So I went to go to the academy and I didn't get it. And so it was a setback. And so I was like, okay, what do I do? Is this maybe, you know, somebody, you know, God trying to tell me, okay, go do ballet? But I really was struggling with that. I liked it, but it wasn't something I felt I could do full time. And then the opportunity to go to the junior academy came. And they actually gave me an option of a variety of different junior academies like Marion Military Institute, the Citadel. But New Mexico Military Institute was in Roswell, which was only about a 6-hour drive from where I lived in Tucson. So it was, you know, the choice that I went to. And that, I think, was a good choice, because what I like to say is the military is a great place to start, not necessarily the best place to end up. And what I mean by that is it's a great place to start because it gives you the opportunity to step out on your own, have authority, responsibility, but if you screw up and you just make a big mess of everything, there's still a safety net to catch you. There's still, you know, a barracks where you have a roof over your head and a chow hall where you still get food in your stomach. And so it's a great place to learn, to try, to fail, and to succeed. And then from there, go. But a lot of people sometimes get stuck in the military because they don't feel like they can be successful elsewhere. And the military is a great career. My dad was a 20-year vet. My wife was a 20-year vet. So it's a great career. But for me, it was a great place to start and then to venture out and see what I could do from there.
And David, when you say they get stuck, is it they get comfortable, or maybe there is this notion, fear of change?
I think it's a little bit of both. The saying we used to say have was, those who can move up, move out. Those who can't move out, move up. Meaning those who are afraid to risk and try something, because it is comfortable in the military. And the one thing about the military, even though you have responsibility at a young age, you also have somebody telling you, here, get up at 8 o'clock, here, go to chow at 8:30, here, you're going to do that. So it's a set, rigid schedule that is very comfortable for a lot of people.
And I think, sorry to cut you, correct me if I'm wrong, David, I think it's 360 full-on discipline.
Yes. And so
comparing
you don't
to
have,
a civil,
so you don't have to worry about totally failing. It's that discipline, and a lot of people thrive in that discipline. And I mean, it's a mixed blessing or curse, because a lot of people require that and thrive in that. And so when they don't have it any longer in the military, they seek it out in the secular world. And sometimes it's not as a positive thing, because they can be taken advantage of, because you see that happen a lot too, where, people know that somebody wants to have that discipline, and so they take advantage of that.
Mm-hmm. What did the New Mexico Military Institute teach you that has stayed with you forever?
Discipline. Prior to New Mexico Military Institute, if you asked my mom, I would use 3 towels to take a bath and then put them in the hamper and get 3 new ones the next day. I learned how to use 1 towel and hang it up to dry and use it the whole week. I learned how to be organized, because you only had a certain amount of space. My wife still makes fun of me today, because all of my shirts in the closet are 2 finger spaced apart, because that's the way they were supposed to be, you know? So discipline and organization, but also that you're capable. They challenge you to do things that you didn't think you were, both mentally, physically, emotionally, and you can overcome, as my wife tells our grandkids, you can do hard things. And that's where it started to learn that you can do hard things. They really challenge you and push you beyond your comfort zone.
Yeah. There is a joke in my family. I have two boys, and since they were little, since they were 5, every time I tell them, listen, if you don't make your bed and make it properly, we're going to send you to the military school. So they never did because they wanted to go to the military school.
Military school. So here's the little cheat note for anybody who goes to the military school. So they have these things called blousing rubbers, which you put around the ankles of your feet to kind of make that little cuff in your boot, your pant leg where your boot is. So at the military academy there, they used to come and we'd have to make our bed really tight. And then they would come and flip a quarter actually to see if it kind of bounced. So what I would do is I took blousing rubbers and I went underneath my bed and I stretched those blousing rubbers to the blankets and pulled the blanket underneath really tight. So when they came and flipped a quarter on my bed, it bounced really good.
Wow. Yeah, love it. Love it. Yeah. Yeah. David, at 21, you're suddenly responsible for a nuclear reactor on a submarine. That's an insane responsibility, in my view, and in so many, What was on your mind during those years?
Really just doing the mission. I mean, it's hard for people to fathom and understand that it was September of one year, I think it was, let's say, 1983, that we went on the sub and went underneath the water. And then it wasn't until June of 1984 before I saw the sun or breathed fresh air. Wow. Or had a day off. So you're underneath the water and you have a mission that has to be accomplished. You don't get to pull into a gas station somewhere and, recharge. You have to do it all right there. What you do is you take the water from the ocean and you strip off the oxygen and then you pump the oxygen into the air and you pump the hydrogen back into the water. So all of the air you're breathing is stale, stagnant air that just has fresh oxygen pumped into it. And there was a period, so the sub has what's called up forward and back aft, and there's reactor doors, the tunnel doors. And you have an oxygen bleed back aft and an oxygen bleed up front. The oxygen bleed back aft was busted, and it took about 3 days before we were able to get it fixed. So what we did is we opened the tunnel doors, and we had a fan blowing oxygen from up forward to back aft. But the oxygen level back aft was so low that you couldn't even keep a cigarette lit. And this is back when you used to be able to smoke, when you were on subs. That's how old I am. And so you would go back to stand watch, and you were just doing everything you could to stay awake because there wasn't enough oxygen to actually keep you awake. And then you finished watch and you went back up forward to get something to eat or to do study or whatever. And now you're hit with all this fresh oxygen. And so you're wide awake. And so it was like 3 days where I didn't sleep. Any of the engineering people never didn't sleep because they were oxygen deprived and full of oxygen, oxygen deprived and full of oxygen. And people don't really understand how that concept is and how on a sub, the most unsanitary and uncongenial way to live, in my opinion, is on a sub because you don't have fresh air. So everything is stagnant and you make fresh water, but the fresh water that you make is very noisy to make. So you have limited ability of how much you make. So you're only taking a shower about once every 3 to 4 days because there's just not enough water to do so. But there's not enough rack space for everybody to have their own rack. So you do what's called hot racking. While somebody's on watch, you sleep in that bunk. When they're on watch, then they, when you're on watch, they sleep in that bunk. And so you're crawling into a bunk to go to bed that somebody who took a shower 4 days ago just crawled out of. Not very good.
Wow.
And you actually turn a yellow jaundice color because there's no fresh sunlight. And so when you come off the sub, you actually look kind of greenish yellow jaundice, and you lose depth perception because nothing's coming at you or going away from you at any rate of speed, and there's always something at least 3-4 feet in your way. And it usually took me about 2 days of being back off the sub before I could actually drive, before I had depth perception. And I remember playing a pickup softball game, the first day we were back, and I was on first base, and I went to catch the ball, and it hit me right in the head because I couldn't judge the ball being thrown to me because of the depth perception. So it's that concept that you're living with and dealing with, and you just learn how to cope with it. You learn how to, hey, it is what it is, and we've got a mission to do, and so we just have to deal with it. And so what the Navy tells you is, I didn't give you a life in your sea bag, so I don't expect you to have a life while you're out at sea. Meaning your sea bag is everything you bring with you. And I remember this one time we went out to sea, and we came back about maybe 4 months later. And like the third or fourth day we were out at sea, one of the gentlemen on the sub, his whole family, his wife and kids, got in a car accident, and they all died.
Oh,
Now, the wife's family went to the Red Cross. The Red Cross went to the Navy and told them what happened. The Navy sent a broadcast message to the sub, because every day you float the wire and broadcast messages get sent. But the captain then chooses whether or not he tells the people. And so we were on a mission that was critical, and so the captain chose not to tell the person because there was nothing he could do about it. Yeah. And so the person didn't find out that his family had passed away until we pulled back into port 4 months later.
Oh, yeah.
And his family didn't know why he didn't show up. All they knew was they told the Red Cross. The Red Cross says, yes, we notified the Navy, and they were expecting that the Navy would have what's called humevac, a humanitarian, surf at the sub, sent a helicopter, picked him up, and flew him back to be with there for his family's funeral. And so his whole world was turned upside down, and his family blamed him for not being there, but he never even knew. And but that's just the reality that you're in when you choose to be in that, in the military. And so that's what you learn, is that you have to compartmentalize, and you have to be able to get past the circumstances of the moment to complete the mission, or else you go crazy.
Yeah. Thanks for sharing those stories. How do you lead people, especially at that age, 21, who are older and more experienced than you, without trying to act like a boss?
That's a good question. You got to figure that out. I remember, when I first got out of the military, I started working in power plants, and then I worked my way up to managing power plants. And so I first was managing a power plant when I was 30 years old. And there were people who were working at the power plant who were 50 years old, like you said, and that was the only job they had. They got that job right out of high school, and they'd been operating at the power plant. And I remember saying, okay, this is how we're going to do stuff. And they were like, well, we never did it that way before. And then my first thought was, well, I was never your boss before. And then I realized, yeah, that's not going to cut it. So what I did is I was like, okay, every Wednesday I'm going to operate the plant. And so these guys, who are 50 years old, looking at this, 30-year-old kid going, why are you going to operate? That's our job. I was like, because I'm going to do it first. So when I tell you this is the way I want it done, you can't tell me I don't understand what it takes to do what I want, because I'm going to do it first and show you that, yes, it's beneficial. And then from there, you can buy into it, and you can see the benefit of doing it other than just me dictating it to you. So that was my first true foray outside of the military, because in the military, you got to do what I tell you.
Yeah.
Period.
Period.
Period. But outside of that, I had to figure out a way to bring people along. And I found that people don't argue with their own data. So if you can provide them the resources where they can see the benefit for themselves, then they buy into it a lot easier. And it really was a cultural change, because back when I first started managing power plants, it was back before lockout tagout was a thing. And so I used to manage a power plant that was a wood-fired power plant. So we burned wood chips, and it was up in New Hampshire. And so they had this great big auger which would turn and bring the wood chips into the boiler. And if you were going to operate on something, what they would do is they would push the stop button, and they would take a wood chip and they would place the wood chip there to hold the stop button in place. And that meant somebody was working on it. Well, the wood chip could have fell out, and it actually did. There was in Fitchburg, Massachusetts, where a person actually was working on the grinder, and the wood chip fell out. Somebody went to restart it, not knowing somebody was in there, and it ground that person up. And that really kind of started a lot of the impetus with, hey, lockout, tag out, and all that kind of stuff. And so I came into the management world right at the beginning of that and trying to set that cultural change of, no, we need to take the time to do lockout, tag out. Because in the military, you do lockout, tag out.
Yeah.
Yep.
Was there a moment when you realized, David, leadership isn't about authority?
Very early on when I was in New Mexico Military Institute, and that drill sergeant told me, go play golf. That's when I learned it wasn't about authority. It was about equipping and empowering. And and it's so true. I mean, if you look at World War, if you look at the military and a lot of the wars, second lieutenants, they call them 90-day wonders. A lot of them got shot and killed by their own people because they were leading their people into dangerous situations without knowledge, because it was like, I'm the leader, I'm the platoon leader, you have to follow me. And, I actually had so when I was on the subs, I had a new, what we called engineering officer of the watch. And so we were in the shipyard and we were doing a fueling overhaul. And so this new engineering officer of the watch came in at 3:00, and I had just sent my guys to bed. They had been up all day. We were doing work, and I had just sent them to bed at 3:00 in the morning. They were going to be up at 6:00, so they're going to get 3 hours worth of sleep. And he came on at 3:00 for his, rounds, and he said, hey, I want you to go hang these tags for this job that's going to get done in the morning. And I was like, I just sent my guys to bed. This work isn't going to get done until sometime in the afternoon. The oncoming shift can do it. He goes, no, you need to go hang it. I want it done. And he wanted to make brownie points with the oncoming duty officer because he was the new duty officer. And I was like, no, I'm not going to do it. And he was like, you have to do what I tell you. It's a direct order. And I was like, I choose to do what you tell me because it's for my best interest, but I can also choose not to do what you tell me and take the consequences. And I'm sorry, I'm not going to wake my guys up. They just went to bed. The oncoming watch can do it. So he wrote me up, and I went to Captain's Mast. And at Captain's Mast, the captain said, Petrash, the only reason you're not in trouble and in Leavenworth right now is because you do a dang good job. I want you to go apologize to Mr., and I won't say his name. But the bottom line was, I didn't wake my guys up. I went and apologized to him, no problem. My guys appreciated that because they knew what happened as the aftermath, and that's what true leadership is taking care of your team so your team will take care of you.
Mm-hmm. During our intro chat, you told me something that really stuck with me. And you said, you need to speak in a language people can receive.
Yes.
When did you realize that communication is more important than intelligence?
That was actually throughout the whole process, but really when my wife and I, so you're familiar with Myers-Briggs?
Mm-hmm.
So my wife is a Myers-Briggs facilitator, certified Myers-Briggs facilitator. And when we first got married, she wanted me to take the assessment. And I was like, I'm not going to take the assessment. She's like, why? I'm like, it's not going to come out the way you think. And she's like, no, I want you to take it. I was like, no, I'm not going to take it. So finally, a year later, after we'd been married for a year, I said, okay, now I'll take it. And so I took the assessment, and she was like, this doesn't come out the way I expected at all. And I was like, I know. And she goes, you're an engineer and you're a pastor, so I figured it was going to come out that you were a judger, meaning you take data and you process the data, and that you were an extrovert. I'm like, I know you thought that. That's what everybody thinks. But I'm actually an introvert, and I'm an intuitive feeler. I process information by placing myself in the position of other people, and I can empathize with how they feel. So that's how I process and make decisions. And so she was like, well, how do you effectively work in the field of engineering and being, a pastor and having to speak in public and all of that? And I was like, it's because I know my strengths and I know my weaknesses, and I know how to maximize my strengths and minimize my weaknesses. And then so it got us kind of like, wow. And so we were looking at the different ways people process information and tied it in with like the Myers-Briggs aspect. And I was like, this is really kind of key, because some people are visionary, visual. So you have to put it in terms of, I see this, and paint the picture for them. Some people are auditory, so I can hear what you're saying and do that. Some people are extroverts, some people are introverts, some people process data, some people need relationship. And so realizing that really kind of helped us with our small business, being able to communicate and translate the mission, so to speak, in terms that people could really receive. And once we were able to do that, we were able to see the benefit of everybody buying into it, because now they understood, and now we're all rowing in the same direction. And when everybody's rowing in the same direction, it's so much easier than when people are rowing in different directions because they're not really sure and they haven't bought into it. Because it communicated to them in a way that they could receive. And that really kind of ties back into the military where it all started, because in military, it's three-way communication. I say something to you, this is what I'm saying. You repeat back to me, this is what I heard you say. Is that correct? Yes, that's correct. Or no, that's not correct. This is what I was trying to say. And so in the military, you're constantly going back and forth with that three-way communication until you get agreement. And so this is just taking it to the next step to be able to understand that up front and couch it in a way where you get that true communication quicker than that going back and forth.
You broke down leadership into three elements: clarity, competency, and desire. Why is clarity so undervalued?
That's a great question. And that ties in with this whole concept of being able to speak in a language that they can receive, in a way they can receive. Most people don't fail because they want to fail. Most people really want to succeed. And you see so much frustration because people will put all of this energy and effort into this work, and then it's for naught. It's failure work. And they get so frustrated, and you get frustrated, but it's because there wasn't proper communication. And the story I like to tell people is, so you got this jungle, and people are trying to clear a path through the jungle. And so you got all the middle managers, coordinating. I got people up there. I got people sharpening the machete. I got people bringing water. I got people changing out, so they're only working so long in the heat. And I'm making great progress through this, jungle, forming this road. And the true leader, the visionary, crawls up to the tallest tree in the forest, and he looks out, and he looks around, and he yells down, "Wrong forest, wrong direction." And so now all the middle managers are all frustrated because it's, all this work is busy work. So they shout back up, "Shut up, we're making progress." And that's what happens with so many people, because they mistake activity with progress. And that's not necessarily the case. You can be really busy and accomplish nothing towards the end goal. And so the very first thing is clarity. If you want to have success, the three pillars of success, are clarity, competency, desire, and then that, seat part is success. And so it starts with clarity. You have to make sure they're clear of what your expectations are. And so to do that, you have to communicate in a way they can receive. And you have to get buy-in from them saying, yes, I understand. Okay, so you understand that the mission is within 10 days, we have to sell X amount of dollars worth of new business that is monthly contractual business. Yes, I understand that. Great. We have clarity. Yes. Okay, now we go to competency. Now it's incumbent upon the leadership to assess the competency. All right, they know that they have to sell $100,000 worth of new contractual business within 10 days. Are they really capable of doing that? So now we assess the competency, and if they are capable, they just don't have the skill set yet, we need to give them the skill set. So that's incumbent upon leadership to give them training, coaching, mentoring, whatever they need to get the skill set. And then we have to assess, and they have to have buy-in. Yes, I now have the skill set. And it may be that they'll never have the skill set. It's like somebody can say to me, "David, I want you to run a 100-yard dash in 10 seconds, and I'm going to train you and equip you and give you all the resources and tools to do it." Great. I'm never going to run a 100-yard dash in 10 seconds. I'm just not physically capable. So it's incumbent upon leadership to assess that. And if we assess they're not capable of getting the competency, then it's incumbent upon us to be loving and kind to them and move them out and say, "Hey, this isn't for you. This isn't where you can be successful. And if I keep you in this position, you're going to fail and you're going to get frustrated." So we move them out. But once they have clarity, and you both agree, yep, we got clarity. Once they have competency, you agree, yes, you've got the skill set. I agree, you have the skill set. We've given you all the training you need. Now it's desire. And that's the third leg. And I can only, as a leader, only give you short-term desire. Do it or you're fired, right? Do it or you're going to the brig. That's the military. That's short-term desire. It's very powerful, but it doesn't last. True lasting desire, long-term desire has to come from within. I, as a professional, want to make sure I do my job to the best of my ability. And so it's incumbent upon leadership to assess, do they have that desire? If they don't, then again, we need to move them out. But once we assess they have the clarity of mission, they have the skill set for the mission, the competency, and they have the desire to succeed, now we've set up a culture where they can be successful. Now that's where the ripple becomes life-giving instead of a damaging wake. And now they feel empowered, and they move forward, and their ripple becomes life-giving. And it's just a cascading effect. And from that point, that's where I go play golf. I've set up the culture for you. I've ensured you have the clarity, the competency. I know you've got the desire. I've taken away all the roadblocks which are in your way. I've given you the resources you've asked for. Now it's up to you. I go play golf. You need me? Call me.
After 6 hours. Not before. Not before then.
That's it, yes.
Yeah. David, can desire be taught?
I think desire can change. I think it can be mentored. I don't know if it can be taught, because to have true desire, you have to get past yourself, meaning you have to serve something greater than yourself. And one of the questions I ask when I'm interviewing something is, why do you want this job? What is it about this job that draws you to it? And if the answer to that question is, well, I want to get, all the different experiences I can to move up the ladder, and I want to have all of the, that, or, hey, I love to do travel, and this is a job where I can make a lot of money and afford to do my traveling and all that, that's a red flag to me. That's short-term desire. And once roadblocks happen or life happens, it's going to be hard for them to overcome that. But if somebody tells me, you know what? I got a wife and kids, and I need to put food on my table, and I need to put a roof over my kid's head, or, I've got, family members, or I've got, a ministry which I want to be able to serve without having to take money from, so I can roll everything back into it. Something like that, which is a purpose greater than themselves. That's motivation. That's desire, which will take them past the circumstances of the moment. Because unless you have a desire greater than yourself, you'll never get past your circumstances of the moment, because eventually the circumstances of the moment are going to become something that isn't beneficial to you, and then you say, I'm just going to go sit on the couch and eat popcorn.
What role does accountability play in all of this?
Accountability is key, and that's where self comes in, meaning accountability is to yourself. If you are a true professional and you have that desire to be successful, you're going to keep your accountability, you're going to keep yourself accountable for achieving what you need to. Externally, I can hold you accountable by setting up metrics to help you evaluate progress towards that. And as a leader, that's part of my job, to constantly communicate with you and assess with you. But that true accountability comes from within itself. And I learned this at an early age as well in my leadership skill, how different people like to be held accountable. I don't like somebody watching over my shoulder. I like, give me the ability, give me the tools, let me go do my job.
Micromanagement never ends well.
Right. And I had a young engineer who worked for me, and he called me up. And he was like, David, I haven't spoken to you in about a month, and so I just want to make sure that I'm doing okay. And I was like, yeah, if you weren't, I would have reached out to you. He's like, no, I need it more frequently. And I was like, okay, how often do you want to touch base? He goes, at least 1 week. So I was like, okay. So once a week I would call him, and he'd be like, oh, this is what I'm doing. I'm like, yeah, okay, great, yeah, okay. He just needed to know that I was listening to what he was doing. But I was like, okay, that's what he needed. And so that was, again, into the way people received. And I had another gentleman who worked for me, and he actually was Marshawn Lynch's roommate in college, and he actually played pro football for a couple of years. And what he needed was to have his manhood challenged. And
Oh,
so he told me one time, he goes, Dave, he was like, when you first started leading us, you told us you didn't care about us personally, you cared about the mission. He goes, but what I found is that you care intimately about us, and you care enough to coach us and lead us individually in how we need to be led. And he goes, I've watched you with everybody, and your leadership style is different with everybody. And he goes, you've learned you have to challenge my manhood. And he goes, that's how you get my results. And I was like, yep.
and on that, David, talking about the leadership style, what's your best advice to folks out there trying to lead with both, basically? One with accountability and second with empathy. How do you balance these two?
That's
Because
a great.
it's not how I say, it's not easy said, but you know, yeah,
Yes, and that's a great question, and that's the dichotomy and the trouble that a lot of people get into, because as a leader, you're accountable for achieving the mission as well. And so as a leader, you need to make sure it's right people, right seat. And there's nothing wrong with assessing that somebody just isn't in the right seat and saying, hey, this is not where you can be successful. Let us move you to a place where you can be successful. They might view it as you criticizing them, but it's truly the most beneficial and loving thing you can do for them, because if you leave them where they're at, they're going to fail and you're going to fail. So it's
right,
okay to say, we're not all rowing in the right direction. Wrong person, wrong seat. Let's change you and get you to where you can be successful. And it may be that where they can be successful is not in this organization. They're just not a fit for the organization. And that's okay too. And you communicate it in a way you can. One of the proudest moments I ever had as a leader, and usually when I fill out like a job application or something like that, and people ask, that question, I had a gentleman who worked for me, and he was going through a lot of personal struggles, and he was failing at his job. And so I had to set up with him and have that heart to heart with him to say, listen, I love you. You're failing at your job. This isn't about you failing at your job. This is about you needing to get the help that you need. So I'm going to remove you from your job so I can help you get plugged in to the help that you need. Once you get the help that you need, we can reassess then whether it's time to plug you back into your job or whether you need to go somewhere else. And at first, he was very angry and filed for like a wrongful, discharge, dismissal, which was fine. And I needed to deal with that on my own. But after he got the help he needed, he came back to me about 2 years later and thanked me and said, you knew what I needed and you wouldn't let me not get what I needed. And so you saved my life. Thank you.
right, right.
And so that is where you lead with accountability and empathy. You need to see the people where they're at, and life happens. And so you may need to be the bad guy. I always tell people, my wife and I, we co-pastored a church for several years, and I always told people my wife was the true shepherd. She had the true shepherd's heart. She embodied love and grace and mercy for everybody, embodied the true empathy of Christ. But she could never be a senior pastor because she internalized everything so much. And if somebody, got angry or upset at her, she would internalize that, and she'd be out for a couple of days just dealing with it, feeling so guilty. And I would tell her, you are the person who goes and does the hospital visits. You are the person who goes and loves them when they're, hurting. I'm the one who will stand up there, get kicked in the you-know-what, get spit on, get stomped on, get turned around, pounded on, and get called an a-hole and say, thank you very much, but this is what God's calling us to do. This is what we're going to do. And so you need to be able to do that. And it's hard to have it all in one person because it really takes a lot. So that's why God equipped me with my wife, because she had the true shepherd's heart. So together, I always said we made one good pastor. But it's realizing that and being okay with the fact that you yourself are imperfect and you're going to fail. And the best you can do is get past yourself and say, okay, God, where is it that you're leading me, and how can I be your hands and feet in this situation to not only lead, but to have empathy, to help people where they're at. And it's okay to be able to say, I need to separate you right now because this is about you personally and not about the mission. The mission still needs to get done, and so I might have to, plug somebody else in to get the mission. And that's where leadership is always assessing. We don't have, as leaders, we don't have to do the work. We have to equip people who can do the work.
Right. Thanks for sharing. David, I need to bring to your attention, and for sure you know that, we live in a world or in an era where we value, especially the young adults, they see themselves valued based on the number of followers they have, based on number of likes they get through social media and stuff like that. And this develop in this type of person, this constant need for attention. Now, you as a leader or any leader, when they are facing or in a situation where someone is constantly, he or she, like you were talking about a gentleman, he was calling you all the time, trying to give you a kind of a brief about what he did and things like that. So when you're faced with individuals that constantly want attention, I think they do it without thinking. How do you deal with that?
Yeah, and that's so key, and you see that so much today, and I think it's so damaging. But culturally, that's what we've set up with people, and the younger generation thrives in it. And so it's learning again to be able to communicate in a way where they can receive. So I've sat down with people who have been on the team, and I've assessed and said, okay, I'm going to ask you if you understand what the mission is. And so let's get clarity. And so then once we've gotten clarity, I would say, okay, now it's competency. So let's go to the competency. And I would say something to the effect of, now I notice that in you doing your job, you constantly seem to need affirmation, and you constantly seem to need constant positive, pats on the back. Is this something you need to be successful? If it's something you need to be successful, let me know, and we'll set up that so you can be. Or is it just that you're not truly comfortable or not truly secure in your own skill set? And if that's the case, then let's make sure you are comfortable in your skill set so you can stand on your own and realize you're the professional. Because I've hired professionals. I haven't hired somebody that needs a babysitter. If you need a babysitter, then I'll take, that money out of your paycheck and hire you a babysitter and make sure that somebody's here to give you all the pats on the back that you need. Is that what you're telling me you want? You tell me what you need to be successful, and it's my job to give you that resource and take away roadblocks. And usually when you couch it in that way, they're like, well, no, I'm okay. Well, then I trust you. You're a grown adult. So I trust you to be a grown adult. If you don't trust yourself, then that's something we need to address. So you tell me, do you trust yourself? And I actually, had one person, he was like, well, he was making X, and he was like, well, I need to make Y. And I was like, okay, I'll tell you what, I'll increase your commission structure so you go out and you sell and you'll make Y plus. Well, no, I need it in my base. So you're telling me you don't trust yourself to sell? Well, no, I'm going to go out and sell. Okay, then I'm going to increase your commission structure so that you're going to be able to make significantly more. Are you willing to bet on yourself? You're asking me to bet on you. Are you willing to bet on yourself? Because if you're not willing to bet on yourself, then why should I bet on you? Well, no, I need it in my base. Sorry. You're telling me that you don't trust yourself and you're not willing to bet on yourself. And he's like, no, that's not what I'm saying. I was like, well, you go decide. Take a week, think about it. And if you want to bet on yourself, I'll increase your commission structure. If you don't want to bet on yourself, then we can part ways as friends right now, and this job isn't for you. And so he came back in a week and said, nope, I found another job where they're going to pay me that base. Great, have a blast. And so he left and went to that job, and we parted as friends.
Great. Pressure reveals people. You've lived that through Submarines, business and ministry. What does pressure reveal about leaders?
Pressure reveals everything. I do this teaching where I take like a bottle, and I'll put Coke, water, coffee, whatever's in there, and I'll screw the cap on. but I'll screw it on loosely. And then I bring somebody up and I was like, okay, leadership is about being able to make decisions under pressure. And I was like, it's like taking this, Coke bottle and shaking it up and putting it under pressure. And that's what's going on inside of you. And you still need to be able to respond and make a decision. I was like, here, let's just do the example. Shake this bottle up. And so they'll go and shake the bottle up and whatever's inside will come out, right? Because the cap's on loosely. And I'll go, oh, I'm so sorry. I didn't tighten that up. And I go, but let me ask you a question. How come the Coke came out? Or the coffee, whatever's in there. And they'll go, well, that's because it was under pressure and we shook it up. And I was like, no, that's because what was inside of it. If water was inside of it, water would have come out. If coffee was inside of it, coffee would have come out. If milk was inside of it, milk would have come out. Whatever's inside of you is what's gonna come out when you're under pressure. So make sure what's inside of you is what you want to be in there. Settle yourself, calm yourself, let go of your demons, let go of your anger, because if you don't, what's inside of you is going to come out when you get shooken up and pressure hits you. And that's a very good visual, which people go, oh, wow. And so you have to find a way to center yourself. And for me, that's letting go of who I am to be who I'm supposed to be in Christ. And that's what I kind of teach people. And I say, whether it's Christ, whether it's Buddha, whatever your higher power is, let go of who you are so you can be filled with that higher power, because at that moment where you get shooken up, that's what's going to come out. And you want that true peace, that calmness, that ability to get past your circumstances of the moment so you can make the right decision. And then I tell them, make a decision, 50, 90. You got to make a decision. 50% of the time, it might be the right answer, it might be the wrong answer. But if you don't make a decision, 90% of the time, it's going to be the wrong answer. You got to make a decision. That's your job as a leader.
And how do you teach folks to stay calm in high-stakes situations, especially where they think they can control the outcome?
That's the key, and it's called control. And I try to teach that you need to leave the outcome up to God. And to me, that's, my faith coming in, and that's what Ripple of Faith leadership is all about. And so many people try to control the outcome. And I tell them, listen, if you think you're fishing for bass and God keeps sending you trout, guess what? You're fishing for trout. So you need to change your care and feeding habits to take care of trout. But so many people are like, no, I want bass, so I'm going to change the bait. It doesn't work that way.
I love it. I'm going to use this example. Love it.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so that's the journey, trying to get people to the point where they realize, and I tell them, in this country and in Christ, in country, I mean the United States, we have a lot of rights and freedoms. But our greatest right and our greatest freedom in Christ is to lay down our rights for others, to let go of a right to be angry, to let go of a right to be upset, to let go of a right to say, what about me? To let go of everything so we can be Christ to them. And that's how you get to that true peace that transcends all understanding. Is the biggest hindrance to that ability is self. And so you got to be able to let go of self. Yes, you have the right to be upset. Yes, you have the right to be angry. Even Jesus got angry, right? But you need to surrender that to him so he can shine through in those moments and not self. It's easier said than done, absolutely. And I tell everybody, the salvation of a soul is a matter of a moment, but the maturation of a saint is a process of a lifetime. True. And it's okay. You're going to fail over and over again, but you keep going back to the well.
Yeah. So true. Let's shift gear, David, and talk about the Ripple of Faith leadership. When did the idea of ripple effect really become clear to you?
That actually started, so way back when I was first doing the consulting world, when I got out of the military, and then I was working in power plants, then I came to the consulting side. I worked for a company called Calgon Corporation, and you might not remember, Calgon, Take Me Away, bath beads and all that kind of stuff.
No.
But they did water treatment, industrial water treatment, and they had a symbol, which was a drop of water coming down, and it would hit the water and it would create a ripple. And so that was their logo, it would create that ripple. And so from there, it really kind of moved from there, that whole concept. And then when my wife and I started our small business, it's actually a franchise, and it's the franchisor is Citywide Facility Solutions out of Kansas City, and their logo and their concept incorporates that same ripple and having that ripple. And so that just reaffirmed with me the whole concept of having that ripple be a positive ripple, because, like I said, water can either cause destruction or bring life. And so from there, it really kind of moved out from that point. And so when I wrote my book and when we started, the leadership programs, it just made sense for it to be that ripple and keep that concept going, because it's something that has been throughout my whole career, interwoven with it, and so that visual is always in my head.
You talk about the difference between the life-giving ripple and the damaging wake. Can you, David, explain what you mean?
Yeah, so just take the example of water. So water is life-giving, right? Without water, you don't survive. And so you need water to have life and to grow things. But water can also be a destruction, right? You can try to teach somebody, and you're teaching them with a garden hose where it's trickling out so they can absorb it, or you're teaching them with a fire hose where it's just a blast and they're getting overwhelmed and they don't retain anything. Or you can see, when a tsunami hits and the water just comes in and it just destroys everything in its path.
Yeah.
Water is going to take the path of least resistance. And so when it does, it can either bring life or it can bring destruction. And so that's the concept, the same concept with the ripple of faith leadership, because your leadership style can either bring life. You're empowering people, you're making them feel heard, you're making them feel valued, you're speaking in a way they can receive, and they're like, okay, I'm seen, I'm heard, I'm valued, I can buy into this because I know what they want of me, I can be successful. Now they spread their ripple and it keeps going, and that ripple becomes life-giving wherever it goes. Or you can be authoritative and autocratic and say, no, you have to do it this way. This is, the way it needs to be done. I don't care if, your natural abilities or Y, you need to adapt and do Z. And it's just going to crush them and it's going to destroy them. And now your leadership style brings damage wherever it goes instead of life. And you've seen it from coaches who empower and really bring the best out of their team. And people forever remember, I remember Coach Jones back when I was in third grade. He really, or you've seen coaches which are like, throwing the chair and yelling and screaming, and the kids become afraid to even compete. So, one's a damaging wake and one's a life-giving ripple.
Yeah. Can one person truly change the culture around them?
Oh, I think so. Absolutely, I think so. I think my wife, Trina, is perfect at that. She's the true culture setter. And I think when you are able to make people feel valued, heard, and understood, it changes everything. When I first got my job as a C-suite person, so I was middle management, and at the company I was at the time, they brought in a new CEO, and so he fired 28 top line managers, and he said, okay, there's no longer any districts, we're going to 4 regions, and he goes, I'm going to have 4 regional VPs. And so I was 2 levels below the district, but I was like, I'm going to go ahead and apply for it. And so I applied for it. And he called me in and he said, Dave, what makes you think you can go from $6 million and 6 people, because at the time I was managing 6 people at a $6 million value, to 60 people and $60 million? And I said, because I'm George S. Patton. And he goes, what do you mean you're George S. Patton? I said, listen, make no mistake about it. The hill's on fire. This company has not made its quota, its goal, any quarter in the last 4 years. That's why they fired the previous CEO. That's why they brought you in. That's why you're changing everything. Right now, you need somebody who can build a team that the team will follow and say, follow me, even though the hill's on fire. I'm going to get you to the top of the hill. It's going to be okay. I can build that team and I can get you to the top of the hill. In 3 years, when we're at the top of the hill and the hill's no longer on fire and you need a political leader, that's not me. I'm not the guy who's going to be your yes man. I'm the guy who's going to build you a team and get you to the top of the hill, because I can make sure that I get a team that will follow me because they'll trust me. And so he gave me the job, and it was a 3-step bump. And he was like, okay. And in 3 years, I got it. We got to the top of the hill. And then at 3 years, things changed and you could see the handwriting on the wall. And so I took a buyout from the company because I was like, yeah, I'm going to get fired because I'm not the political leader.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yes.
It's very interesting because what we said so far, it all lead, or the trigger is the trust.
Yes.
And it's how on earth, as a leader, depend on your leadership style, depend on your skills and stuff like that. It's the process it takes to get everyone aligned and everyone trusting you.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep. Get everybody rowing in the same direction. Right person,
Absolutely.
right seat. Yes.
And if you're going to fish for a salmon, don't be disappointed if you catch a pike.
There you go.
I love it. I just love it. Yeah. You are listening to the Pre-Zero Sports Talk. For more conversations on sports leadership, faith, performance, and innovation from Sweden to the world, visit prezerosportstalk.com. David, you talk a lot about flipping the focus from inward to outward. Why do you think society has become so self-centered?
I think we've done it to ourselves. I think, as you become, as a culture and a society becomes more prosperous, it becomes more about self. And when you have the luxury of being able to look at all of these things and worry about self, it means you've gotten to that point where you're no longer just struggling to put food on your family's table for that day. And so in that aspect, we now have an inward focus and we view everything from how it impacts us, and eventually everything's going to become self-limiting. We need to be able to flip it. And so what I tell people is, I want you to join hands in a circle. I get about 10 people and I say, okay, I want you to join hands in a circle. This is the way we come at life, right? We have a relationship with each other, but we're keeping each other at arm's length. We have a relationship with the Lord because we can look upward, but where's our focus? Our focus is inward. And because it's inward, we're viewing everything from how it impacts us. And eventually something's going to negatively impact us. And the circumstances of that moment are going to become debilitating, and it's going to come to a natural end. Now, what I want you to do is I want you to turn your backs to each other, and I want you to interlock your elbows in that same circle. Now, I want you to notice a few things. Your position hasn't changed. Your circumstances of the moment hasn't changed. What's changed is your focus. And now your focus is outward. And because your focus is outward, Dave can see Bill's needs and Sue's needs, and Sue can see Dave's and Bill's, and we can all see what everybody else needs, and we can all see how our actions and reactions impact those around us. And nobody has to say, hey, wait a second, what about me? Because everybody sees you. And now we can shift our actions and reactions to be beneficial because our focus is outward. And when our focus is outward, that ripple can spread and become life-giving instead of being an inward damaging wake. And it's just a matter of getting past yourself. The biggest limiting factor is self. And we got to get past ourself to say, okay, God, it's not about me. It's about you. It's about your kingdom. It's about those you bring into my path. Because for whatever reason, God chose to work through mankind. And so Jesus says, I am the head, you are the body. So we're his hands and feet. Yeah. So if we want the world to see a Christ that will walk across the street to feed them, we need to walk across the street and feed them. If we want the world to see a Christ that will love them when they're unlovable, we need to love them when they're unlovable. We need to get past ourselves and say, okay, God, not my will, but yours be done. How do you want to use me today? And that's where our culture has become so inward, because everybody has said you can't be good to anybody else until you're good to yourself. That's a bunch of BS. By being good to others, you become the best to yourself.
Yeah. Thank you for that, David. Thanks a lot. Can you, for my listeners, explain again what changes in someone's life when they stop asking, what about me?
I think everything changes. I think your inner self-image changes when you stop asking, what about me? And start asking, okay, God, where can I be used by you? Because your whole mentality shifts and your whole understanding shifts, and you're okay with saying, this is enough. And that's where Paul says in Scripture, I've learned to be content in all things. And he also says, I've learned to be, all things to all people. It's not letting go of integrity. It's not letting go of the message. The message is still the same. It's just Paul learned to give it in a way that others could receive. And he learned to be content wherever God put him at that time, whether he was in prison or whether he was in a shipwreck or whether he was, eating, high off the hog for the time, realizing that the circumstances of the moment are just that. And I always tell people, whenever I'm like counseling somebody will eventually go, but I feel. And I'll go, stop right there. And they're like, what? I was like, I don't care what you feel. And they're like, what do you mean you don't care what I feel? You're a pastor. You're supposed to care what I feel. And I tell them, yes, I do care what you feel. Your feelings are valued. Feelings are real. But your feelings are based off of your circumstances of the moment. And as soon as your circumstances of the moment change, your feelings are going to change. So what I want to know is, what is it that you want? And together we can try to accomplish it. But if you're just going off of your feelings, it's going to change as soon as your circumstances change. And so that's where I say Trina and I, my wife, are make one good pastor, because she came along and she said, feel the feelings, but choose the behavior. And I'm like, that sounds so much better than I don't care what you feel. And so that's the concept. Feel the feelings, the real, but you have to make a conscious choice for the behavior. And that's where you have to let go of self so you can be all you're meant to be in Christ.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. Your book and your song both explore the idea of let go and let God. What does what does surrender really mean in real life?
Yes, and to me,
we people of faith. Sorry to cut you, David. Just to put our listeners into, we people of faith, we understand what surrender and the definition of surrender is. Hang on, what do you mean by surrender? Giving up everything? And I say no, we don't give up, but we let in.
Yes, absolutely. We let in. We open up our hands so we can receive. So many of us hold on so tight that there's no place for God to put anything. When we open up our hands, we can receive. And it's interesting, in the Western culture, we say, I give my life to the Lord. I choose to surrender. And when you give, you can take back. And when you choose, you can unchoose. But true surrender is understanding, okay, God, I don't get it. I don't like it. I would come up with a variety of different ways to do this, but you're God, I'm not. You know better than I do. So I submit, surrender, complete capitulation to you. I open myself up to receive what it is that you have for me. And that's letting go of self. And again, it's one step forward, 3 steps back, 1 step forward, 3 steps back. We're going to fail again and again. And actually, I just wrote another song that's I'm working with the musician to sing and kind of get the music where we want it right now. And it's called Help Me Believe. And the lyrics go, God, it's me again, right back where I started. Don't let this be where I end. And then the chorus goes, if there's still a place for me, help me believe, help me believe. And it's all about this concept that, God, I've surrendered my life to you, but I found myself right back doing what I've always done. Please don't let this be the repeating aspect of my life. And it is. The maturation of a son is a process of a lifetime. And we're going to fail. And that's okay. God knows that. But he's still there to be with us, beside us, to carry us. And it's constantly a moment by moment, day by day, surrender. Okay, God, use me. Here I am.
Mm-hmm. Good. David, a friend of mine, I briefed him about this episode, and he asked me to ask you the following question.
Yep.
So, does faith make leadership easier or more difficult?
It makes it more difficult, in my opinion, because faith gets you to the point where you realize it's not about you. If you don't have faith, if you don't have something greater than yourself, then it's all about self. And so I used to say from the pulpit, I would tell people, same thing, it's not about you. And I would tell them, if it's not about you, then it leaves only one thing. It's about me. But I would say it jokingly. But that's the reality. It's not about you. And when you truly have faith, when you truly are able to let go and let God, you realize, okay, it's about him. It's about his kingdom. And so to get to that place where you have that peace that transcends all understanding, you need to be able to let go of who you are. And that's very difficult because that's letting go of control. And so much of leadership, so many leaders want to have control because they realize the outcome is their responsibility. And when you give up control, you give up the outcome. But if you have true trust in your faith, in the one that guides you, and for me it's Christ Jesus, then you're okay. And if you fail, you're okay. If you succeed, you're okay, because your identity is not tied up in your position, it's tied up in your faith. And so to me, it makes it harder because you have to let go of control, and that's so difficult.
Yeah. Good. Let's talk now about family, marriage, and building strong foundations, mainly for young adults out there. David, you and Trina have both gone through difficult seasons before finding each other. How have those experiences shaped your relationship today?
I think they've brought us together. I think God allowed us to go through all of these different journeys to, bring us together to make one good team, one good pastor for his purposes. It's kind of like the song by, was it God Bless the Broken Road? I forget who sings it, but, God bless the broken road that, led me straight to you. And so everything Trina's gone through, she's a 20-year military vet. She was, in the war. She suffers from PTSD. She's a disabled vet. I was in the military. I've gone through my own struggles. And together, God brought us and made us one good pastor. And I remember, when I told my mom that Trina and I were getting married, I was living in New Hampshire at the time, and she lives in Arizona, and I had been married before. And all of my relationships before were with petite blondes. And so my mom asked me.
That was your type.
That was my type. Yes, and so my mom asked me when I said, I'm getting married, and she said, "Is she a petite blonde?" And I said, "No, she's actually taller than me, and currently weighs a little bit more than me." And my mom's like, "Okay, I approve."
Shout out to your mom.
Yes. So I'm not Trina's type originally, and she's not my type originally, but God brought us together because he knew we were who we, each one of us needed. And it's been such a great blessing. And just really, as it, says in the movie, what was the one, you complete me. She really completes me, and I complete her. And we, just make each other the best we can be.
Fantastic. What makes a strong marriage last?
I think, again, getting past self, realizing that most people, at least in our culture, think marriage is supposed to make me happy. You make me happy. No, there's going to be times when you don't like the person you're married to, but you still love them. One of the greatest marriages I ever saw was an arranged marriage. It was a couple from India, and they were both professors at Arizona State University. They met each other the first day they met each other was the day they got married, and it was arranged marriage from their families. But they came to that relationship with a different understanding, a different clarity, right? And so they worked to build their marriage as opposed to saying, "Oh no, you're supposed to fulfill all my needs and all my desires and all my wants," and it doesn't happen, because eventually the circumstances of the moment are going to be where they're not beneficial to one or the other or both. And so true lasting marriage, I think, understands that the clarity of that marriage is not to make you both happy, it's to make you both holy in the eyes of Christ. Allowing, that's why a cord of 3 strands is not easily severed. And the image that I kind of tell people that God gave me when I was doing marriage counseling, it's like a corral of 2 horses who are both high-spirited, and they're both, wanting to run wild, and they're both, angry sometimes, and they're fighting, and sometimes they get along real well and all of this, but they just at times want to break free, but the only way out of the corral is through the gate, and that gate is Christ Jesus, and he's not opening it up for you. And so you figure out a way to get through the circumstances of the moment, because the circumstances of the moments are always going to change, and your feelings are going to change. And if you're basing your actions and reactions off of the circumstances of the moment, you're in a losing battle.
David, if you want to give a piece of advice or a wisdom to a young couple that wants to pull the plug, what would it be?
Don't. Seek help, seek guidance, and find somebody who can work with you to realize and help you guys realize that it's not about self. Because you get so many, therapists today, or so many marriage counselors who are like, well, you need to be happy. No, you don't. You're going to be happy eventually. You're not happy right now, because happiness is an inward focus. Joy is an outward focus, right? And Jesus said he found joy in the cross that was before him. Trust me, he wasn't happy about going to the fact. He even said to the Father, Father, if there's any other way, please take this cup from me. But nevertheless, not my will, but yours be done. So seek joy, not happiness. Happiness is inward, joy is outward. And realize that 95% of all marriages that are unhappy today, but spend the time and energy and effort to get past their circumstances of the moment and learn about each other, 5 years later, are happy. It's because the circumstances of the moment changed. And so get past the circumstances of the moment. It's okay to be angry. It's okay to be upset. Feel the feeling, but choose the behavior and choose to stay engaged.
Thank you for that. And quite often the circumstances lead to suffering, And we know that through Paul's letter to the Romans, chapter 5, verses 3 to 5, about suffering. And he explained it beautifully, that suffering produce endurance, and endurance produce character, and character produce hope, and hope does not disappoint.
Amen. And, I absolutely agree with that. And I will say one caveat to it, because I'm sure there are people who are listening to this and going, but I'm in an abusive relationship where my spouse beats me. That's a completely different situation.
Absolutely.
You need to be safe. And that's different. If your circumstances of the moment are that you are in a spot where you are not safe, or your kids are not safe, and that's truly the reality, get to a place where you're safe and hope that person gets the help they need. So just understand that neither one of us are talking about places of abuse or violence. We're talking about in general where people are just, I'm unhappy because, you work 9 to 5 and I want you not to work 9 to 5. Well, you got to put food on the table,
Yeah. A lot of high achievers are driven people, but often there's a heavy price attached to that drive, David. Have there been moments in life where success or ambition pulled you away from being fully present with family?
Yes. And it resulted in, the divorce of my first marriage, my kid's mom. I was at a job where I was gone quite a bit. I was making good money, but I was on the road a lot. And so in that aspect, I wasn't necessarily there as I should have been for my wife and as she needed. So my wife at that time, not my current wife, and she wound up having an affair. And we wound up, trying to get through that, but it wasn't something, that we were able to get through. She wound up having a child with this person she had the affair with. And so that wound up, being the issue. But and I told my wife at the time, I can hold myself accountable for the fact that I wasn't there as you needed and I didn't see that. I've learned from that. But the decision to have the affair and the decision to continue in the affair after we, both were aware of what was going on and were trying to seek help, that's on you. And so I can let go of that and not own that, but I do own my part where I wasn't there as you needed me to be. And so with my subsequent marriage to my current wife, that was a conscious choice to say, okay, let's partner in things and be able to do them together. So when we, started the business, we started the business together. When we were pastoring the church, we pastored the church together. And, my wife said, my current wife, Trina, said when we started the business that her goal was to still be married at the end of it, because she was like, this is going to be stressful owning a business together. And it is.
Yeah.
Yes.
Bless her. Yeah.
Yes.
Why do you think so many successful people still feel restless, unsatisfied, or empty even after achieving outward success?
Because outward success is hollow. It's inward self-satisfaction. It's being able to be okay with who you are, no matter the circumstances. And so many people are searching for outside gratification and outside acceptance that they never accept themselves. And that's where, to me, it's about letting go who you are so you can be all you're meant to be in Christ, finding your identity in Him. And if your higher power is not Christ, whatever your higher power is, but if you try to find your identity in self is always going to let you down.
How do you balance ambition with presence? Because sometimes people are physically there, but emotionally they are completely absent.
Yep. And you've got to ask yourself, what is it that you want? What is your goal? And it's hard. For me, I always tell my wife, my kid's mom, as well as my current wife, Trina, that if it wasn't for my family, I'd be a bum on a motorcycle. If it wasn't, for my desire to put a roof over my family's head and food on their table, if it was just me, I'd be a bum on a motorcycle. And it's like, I'm getting ready to retire. My wife and I stepped down from pastoring about 2 years ago now. We're in the process of selling and transitioning our business, and within 2 years we'll have transitioned our business and sold it. And then I'm retiring within a year, July of 2027, from my current job, where I do consulting work to the power industry. And Eddie always asks me, what are you going to do? You're going to be so bored. Right now you got 3 basically full-time jobs. What are you going to do? You're going to be bored. And I'm like, no, I'm not going to be bored. Because right now, everybody's joking, so you're entering the creative aspect of your life. I'm like, I retired from pastoring, 2 years ago. So I wrote a book. I've written some songs. I've published some articles. We started, Ripple of Faith Web's leadership program. I'm like, it's whatever God's, got me doing. So it's not about finding outside accolations. It's about saying, okay, God, what do you have for us and what do you want me to do? And responding in obedience to that. And so for me, that's how I balance it. For other people, it's a struggle. For everybody, it's a struggle, but you got to find that purpose, which is beyond yourself.
And on that, many people spend their lives chasing achievement, titles, money, building the CV, wanting more and more, and what's next? Recognition, of course, believing peace is waiting on the other side of success. But often the opposite happens. Why do you think achievement alone never satisfies the soul?
Because if you're not okay with who you are without success, you'll never be okay with who you are with success. And so it's, where do you find your identity? And if you find your identity in success, success is fleeting. And so if you're not okay without it, you'll never be okay with it. But if you find your identity, for me, in Christ, it doesn't matter whether you're successful or not successful, you're His just the same. And that's okay. That's enough. And that's the second song I wrote, which is available on Spotify right now. It's called You Are Enough.
We're going to check it out, man. Here we go. Yeah. How do you define success?
I define success as the impact that my ripple has on those that come and that are in my koinonia, my sphere of influence. So does my ripple bring life, or does my ripple cause a damaging wake? And so to me, success is seen in the life-giving ripple that I've had and the positive impact I've had on others to allow them to embrace the best part of who they can be. And that's where I call success.
Thanks. Now, my listeners, they're going to hear this episode and they're going to say, okay, David, he's been a pastor for decades while running businesses and raising a family. How did you on earth avoid burnout?
That's a great question, and everybody always asks me it. And so there was a time where I had 3 full-time jobs. I was a pastor, full-time pastor. I owned a business where I was full-time involved, and then I did not take an income from being a pastor, and I did not take an income from the business.
And it's very demanding. Folks, for my listeners, being a pastor is not like a kind of a hobby.
No,
it's
that's
not.
it. And we would always take all the tithes and offerings and roll them back into ministry and into the community. And with the business, we would take everything and roll it back into growing the business, knowing that when we sold it, that would be our profit and our retirement. So I always needed a job to actually get paid and pay the bills. So I always did consulting work as well to the power industry, and that's where I got paid. And so everybody would ask me, how do you do that? How can you manage to do all that? And my answer is quite simple. And you kind of encapsulated it with your comment. It's where you choose to spend your time. I don't go out hunting and fishing. I don't go out camping. I don't go to the clubs. I don't go dancing at the bars. My hobby is ministry. And so just like if you had a full-time job and your hobby was skeet shooting or your hobby was skiing, whatever it was, you always find time to do your hobby, right? Everybody's like, I got to find time to do my hobby. This is how I recharge. How I recharged was with ministry. And so it was always, that's my hobby. That's how I poured back into it. And so that recharged me versus, decharging me. And it is, like you said, very involved, very intensive, but it also is what fed me. And so that's how I was able to do it. Knowing that my full-time job, was what paid the bills, knowing that managing the business, and I always had people that would do the day-to-day running of stuff that needed to get done, and I did the 30,000-foot leadership aspect. Again, set up the culture, set up the, ensure clarity, competency, the desires there, and then I go play golf. Well, instead of playing golf, I went and did ministry, and I went and did my job that actually paid the bills. And so being able to do all of that is what afforded everything to happen. And purely by the grace of God, though, it's realizing that, okay, I'm okay if I don't go hunting and fishing. I'm okay if I don't go to the club. I'm okay if I don't go to the gym. My wife would say otherwise, but hey,
David, what makes you hopeful?
What makes me hopeful is understanding that there is a higher power, that the higher power has already placed his plan into motion, and I can just seek to see where he's moving and place my hand alongside his. If my hope was in myself, I would be depressed. If my hope was in man alone, I would be depressed. But my hope is in Christ, and so in that, I can let go and let God and leave the outcome up to him. That's what brings me hope.
What kind of ripple do you hope your children and grandchildren will inherit?
I hope they inherit my faith and have a personal relationship with Christ themselves, so they can surrender and find their hope in him as well. It's a struggle. Some of my kids are there, some of them are not. I've got a beautiful daughter who, that third song that I wrote, Help Me Believe, I wrote it with her in mind because she struggles. And she's been in and out of rehab 3 different times, and she's, in a sober living facility right now, trying to get sober again. And I pray for her daily, trusting that, okay, God, you love her more than I ever could, and you are there. And I pray daily that she will surrender to you and say, okay, God, I need you to get through this.
And I will keep her in my prayers as well.
Thank you.
You're welcome. David, we can talk about these things for days, but now it's time for our lightning round.
Oh, okay.
Ready for speedy Q&A?
Yes.
Let's do this. Morning person or a night owl?
A morning person. I'm up at 4 o'clock.
Thanks to the military, I think.
Yes.
One leadership lesson you've learned the hard way.
You can't control everything, so empower people to be their best and let them do their job.
Biggest fear when you were younger?
Not living to 24. I thought I was going to die before I was 24.
A book everyone should read.
The Ripple of Faith by Dave Petrash. I hear it's a great book.
Listeners, you have to get the book. And I will add to that the Bible.
The Bible, absolutely, yes. Now make me feel bad. Okay.
No, it's okay. It's okay. Because we ask so many questions, and I strongly believe all our answers to those questions are there in the Bible.
Yes, absolutely. I agree.
If we pay attention, if we read carefully scripture and try, we have to make an effort to understand and to picture ourselves there. I think 90% of our questions, the answers are there.
Amen.
Best advice you ever received?
Go play golf and let your people do their job.
Now, the worst career advice you ever gotten?
The worst career advice I ever gotten. It's the book by Eckhart Tolle, The Power of Now. I think it's a book from the pit of hell, and I was told to read that book, and I read it, and I was like, oh, this is just wrong in every aspect.
Noted. One thing modern leaders overcomplicate.
Relationships. They overcomplicate relationships.
Coffee, tea, or something else?
Tea. I drank too much coffee in the military. I don't drink coffee anymore.
One daily habit that changed your life?
Getting up early.
What give you peace?
Christ.
Toughest season of your life?
Toughest season of my life was when I wound up getting divorced from my kid's mom, and it was the first thing I couldn't control, and I wound up in a mental institution for 3 months.
One word that defines leadership?
Selflessness. Servant leadership.
If you could have a dinner with the historical figure, who will it be and why?
Jesus, so I can truly ask him the questions that I've been dying to ask and waiting till I get to heaven, and then it won't matter when I'm in heaven, but Jesus.
Advice to a young man today?
You don't need to know all the answers, and you're not going to find happiness in outside aspects. Be okay with who you are.
This one is a bit, because a couple of days ago I wrote a piece on Substack about you will be forgotten when you die. And I went deep into that piece, deep into reflection. And the following question is, what do you hope people remember about you?
I hope I am forgotten when I die. I actually embrace the concept that, nobody is my name. I want them to see Christ and not me. And so when I die, I hope what they remember about me is that Christ flowed out of me, so that the Christ the world saw, they saw in me. And that's what I hope. There's a song, Nobody, that's out there. It's a Christian, contemporary Christian song called Nobody. And I embrace that. I'm just nobody, trying to tell everybody all about somebody who saved my soul.
David Petrash, thank you so much for joining us today and sharing your insight on leadership, faith, communication, family, purpose, and the ripple effect of our lives. Thanks a lot.
Thank you. I appreciate the opportunity. It's been a wonderful conversation. Thank you so much.
And if folks out there, they want to reach out, what's the best way?
They can go to rippleoffaith.com, and there's the website, there's resources, there's a way to connect with me. Or if you remember Ripple of Faith Leadership, just Google Ripple of Faith Leadership, and it will take you to the website.
Great. And to our listeners, I leave you with a few words from the one and only Coach John Wooden. Success is a peace of mind which is a direct result of self-satisfaction in knowing you made the effort to become the best of which you are capable. Thank you.
Amen. Thank you so much.
We want to thank you for joining our show. If you enjoyed this episode, we have more for you. You can now watch the entire episode on our YouTube and Spotify channels. While you're here, subscribe and don't forget to tap the bell. Visit prezerosportstalk.com to explore more conversations on sports, leadership, faith, performance, and innovation. From Sweden to the world. Until next time, stay curious, stay inspired, and make a difference. We'll see you soon. Take care.